Experts solve the mystery of Yuki, the shelter dog that wouldn't stop growing. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to m&rtv and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Shivering wet and alone, too many puppies start their lives in such conditions, and Yuki was one of them. His story might have ended there if fate and two brave individuals hadn't stepped in. Kent and Nancy Smith knew they could help Yuki, but when they met him in person, they realized they were in for something much more complicated than they had expected. A DNA test would later confirm it, but Yuki wasn't the shivering little pup they thought he was. It was 2008, and Yuki's original owner was getting desperate. The small shivering puppy they'd once rescued had transformed into a wild, snarling creature. The owner couldn't get Yuki to sit still, let alone keep him on a leash and away from other people. It was like Yuki was another dog entirely. To make matters worse, the gray matted puppy wasn't really a puppy anymore. The energetic dog was getting too difficult for one person to control, and that alone was enough to make the owner seek help outside. That is, until he noticed another startling trait. At 8 months, Yuki had grown to a bigger size than his owner could have ever expected. Of course, puppies grow, but this much so soon was alarming enough that his owner decided to wipe their hands clean of the matter and make Yuki someone else's problem. The owner dropped Yuki off at an animal shelter in hopes that they could find him a more suitable home. The shelter had seen all kinds of badly behaved pups and wild animals in their time, but it soon became clear that they were no match for Yuki, so they called in the big guns. They knew of a nearby shelter that specialized in taking care of animals that other shelters couldn't handle, owned by Kent and Nancy Smith. The animal shelter's staff and volunteers had overseen the most unruly animals, from badly behaved dogs like Yuki to bobcats and cougars. Settled in Naples, Florida, Kent and Nancy's shelter, Shy Wolf Sanctuary, has helped over 1,200 creatures in need. More than that, the Smiths have emphasized an educational approach to better unify humans with animals. They had no idea then how little they were prepared for an animal like Yuki. 2 staff members from Shy Wolf Sanctuary traveled over to bring Yuki to his new home. The gray dog needed special care and people who could actually understand him, and the staff members knew they were the best people for the job, until they met him face to face. They had been told that Yuki was a tough case, but it was still unnerving to see young Yuki thrashing around in fear when they approached. When he wasn't baring his teeth at them, he was glaring at them with small yellow eyes. Of course, what really struck them as odd was his size. For being only 8 months old, Yuki was big, weirdly big. One look at him and Kent and Nancy knew they weren't dealing with a normal pup, so they arranged for Yuki's DNA to be tested. While they waited for the results, their hunch that something was up with Yuki was only reinforced by his behavior. Yuki definitely didn't have the friendly man's best friend attitude of the other dogs. He was erratic at best and violent at worst, though he slowly got more comfortable at the sanctuary as time went on. Still, the sanctuary staff tried to domesticate him, until an accident made doing so impossible. When Yuki unexpectedly wounded his right knee against a palmetto, he needed 5 surgeries to fully heal. The painful experience only made poor Yuki even more unpredictable. Throughout that period, he became very particular about who was allowed into his cage. It became apparent that the few staff members Yuki liked were women. When comfortable, Yuki could even manage to sit on one of their laps for a cute Instagram moment. Those moments were rare, however. Most of the time, the staff simply tried to figure out why he wouldn't stop growing. When the DNA tests finally came back, the staff didn't know what to expect. As the owners of Shy Wolf Sanctuary, Kent and Nancy definitely had a feeling that Yuki's dog-like appearance didn't tell his entire story. and when they analyzed Yuki's DNA, they saw just how right they were. Yuki had German Shepherd and Siberian Husky in his genetic makeup. With his inquisitive yet protective nature, this made sense, though the German Shepherd and Siberian Husky genes were only a fraction of his DNA. As it turned out, the other 87.5% of Yuki's DNA was gray wolf. With that, everything started to make much more sense. It was no wonder his original owner couldn't handle Yuki. He wasn't a dog at all. Although pure wolves are known to be antisocial to humans, wolf dogs like Yuki are unpredictable. Whether or not he could be domesticated was unclear. The staff at the sanctuary were hopeful that knowing Yuki's DNA would make it easier to domesticate him. After all, some wolf dogs can be successfully managed in a home, but it's a very low percentage. And with Yuki's injury and aversion to males, Shy Wolf Sanctuary became a permanent home for Yuki. Growing up into an adult, Yuki weighed close to 120 pounds. He grew to be over 5 feet long, and by that time, the staff were grateful that Yuki was there to stay. After all, just because Yuki couldn't be fully domesticated didn't mean he couldn't have a family. And thanks to the staff members at Shy Wolf Sanctuary, Yuki had his own fans too. Through Instagram, the volunteers kept their followers up to date on the daily lives of their very own wolf dog. They updated their followers on Yuki's favorite activities and even on his love life. Yuki went on to find a mate with a canine named Bella. To the shock of the staff, it was Bella who ended up being the alpha of the pair. The duo lived together happily for years, their lives broadcast on Instagram. But as Yuki got older, he received something no one expected: a cancer diagnosis. Though heartbroken, Shy Wolf Sanctuary did their best to ensure that Yuki enjoyed his final days. In November 2020, after years of rescue, rehabilitation, and love, Yuki passed away. Though he would no longer roam the sanctuary, Yuki still managed to inspire Kent and Nancy into making a huge decision. Inspired by their difficult but rewarding years with Yuki, the Shy Wolf Sanctuary successfully managed to purchase another area in Florida. With more funding, the staff will only continue to grow their animal haven. After all, with their habitats disappearing all over the world, wolves need our help now more than ever. However, as much as we try to do our best for animals, our good intentions can sometimes backfire in a big way. When 3 Estonian construction workers spotted a dog in dire need of help, they rushed to his aid without a second thought, but their plan backfired big time. Rando Kartsep, Robin Selmaye, and Eric Valli sure had an exciting day working construction in early 2019. While performing repairs on the Sindi Dam in Estonia, the 3 men were caught off guard by an unusual sound. The workers approached the bank of the Parnu River to investigate, and about 100 yards out, they spotted an animal splashing frantically in the water. But as they watched, they soon realized the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just any animal, it was a dog. Right away, it was clear this canine was in danger. The icy river was surely chilling the poor pooch to the bone, and from the way it was struggling, they weren't sure it could tread water much longer. Without hesitation, the 3 men leapt into the river and hurriedly swam toward the struggling animal. The ice was thick, but together they managed to carve a path and bring the dog to safety. The men quickly wrapped the shivering pup with a heavy blanket, and it was then that they were finally able to get a good look at the dog. It was large, with thick fur and piercing yellow eyes, a one-of-a-kind look for a common house pup. Knowing the animal needed help, the workers didn't have much time to admire her coat. The blanket was doing little to warm her up, and only proper medical care, not even a big fat fire, could save her from hypothermia. So taking the animal in their arms, the men carried their newfound friend to their pickup truck and laid the shivering dog inside. They phoned their local animal hospital, who told them to bring her in right away. The truck sped to the hospital, and all the while the animal never stirred. In fact, it slept almost the entire way, its head laid upon Kartsep's lap. Even in its poor state, it sure was a cuddler. No sooner did they arrive at the hospital than the veterinarians were on the scene, carrying the dog inside and immediately working to nurse it back to health. But there was one problem. This wasn't actually a dog. In fact, veterinarians couldn't identify what it was. With everyone stumped, the doctors phoned in a local hunter to see if he could shed light on the situation. Sure enough, the man knew exactly what they were dealing with. This wasn't a dog, it was a wolf. The construction workers were in shock. Not only had they completely misidentified the animal, but they'd actually kept a live wolf in their vehicle without so much as a leash. If it had wanted to, the wolf could have easily made a snack of them. Thankfully, the icy water had served to sedate the wolf, which explained why it was so docile when the men had rescued it and placed it in their truck. This state of calm wouldn't last, however. It was, after all, a wild animal. At first, he was so done in for he didn't resist at all. We simply kept him in this room, said head clinician Tarvo Markson. But once he started to get an idea of the situation, I felt things might quickly take a turn for the dangerous. And turn they did. For as the animal recovered, it began acting as one would expect a 1-year-old wolf to behave in a small enclosed space. So for its own safety and for the safety of the doctors, the wolf was placed in a cage. By day's end, the animal had made a full recovery, and the clinic was confident she could be reintroduced to the wild without any repercussions. But even so, Estonia's National Environmental Agency decided to fit the wolf with a GPS collar just to be safe. When it came time to release the wolf, it took off in a flash, disappearing back into the wilderness. Kartsep and the others waved goodbye as it went, a bittersweet end to one unforgettable day of work. We're so happy for the outcome of the story and wish to thank all the participants, especially these men who rescued the wolf and the doctors of the clinic who were not afraid to treat and nurture the wild animal, said the Estonian Union for the Protection of Animals of the incident. Still, it wouldn't be surprising to see something like this happen again in Estonia, as the country is home to a large portion of Europe's wolf population. In fact, the wolf was named Estonia's national animal only a few months prior to this incident. Incredibly, this particular wolf was actually spotted in the wild just a month after its run-in with the construction workers. Considering it was photographed over 70 miles from where it had been released, it looked like this lucky guy was doing just fine.